It is Tuesday night in East Lansing. Come on in, gather around, grab a beverage. Let me know what your favorite choice is for tonight. We're going to talk Michigan State football. I'm a little out of breath. Been running up and downstairs trying to get ready, trying to get things together. Sorry I kept you waiting. Those of you that were on the on-deck circle waiting for us to begin. SpartanMag Live right at 9 o'clock. Sorry, a couple minutes late. Again, as usual, apologize for that. Try to get here on time. If they would just fix the parking situation, I'd be happy to be on time. Just kidding about that. Old Tuck is here. He's the bell cow. He's ready to roll. Good to see him. It is October 13th, Tuesday night in East Lansing. After this Saturday, ladies and gentlemen, after this Saturday, if my math is correct, next week will be football week. Michigan State, Rutgers, October 24th, Spartan Stadium. After this week, after this weekend, it'll be game week. Is my math right on that? Is it finally game week? Haven't seen varsity athletic competition at Michigan State University since early March when Michigan State clinched a share of the Big Ten basketball title. Since then, nothing. You all know that, but it just seems strange that it's actually going to happen. Going to dive in. It's going to happen. It's scheduled to happen. Keep your fingers crossed on that. Everything looks pretty good. But amazing. Next week, game week. Michigan State and Rutgers. Michigan State with a chance to go 1-0. We'll be talking about that next week. Mel Tucker is going to speak, I think, again, a little bit later this week, possibly, or defensive assistant coach. And earlier today, Ted Gilmore, Michigan State's tight ends coach, spoke via Zoom press conference. We have that video at SpartanMag.com. By the way, my name is Jim Comporti, publisher of SpartanMag.com. I guess I should have said that at the outset. That makes me a rude host. It's not a very good host for me to not say who I am, for those of you that don't know, who might be watching this later in the week. Those of you watching live, you know full well who I am. And some of you don't like me, but that's okay. I'm going to try to win you over. I'm just kidding. Most of you maggers are pretty agreeable to everything. But SpartanMag.com is our home waters. That's where we hang out. SpartanMag.com. It is the Michigan State website for Rivals.com. And it is the church of what's happening now for Michigan State sports, especially if this microphone works. The Underground Bunker message board is the church of what's happening now. That's where we talk about Michigan State sports all the time. And all these people post. I invite them to post questions about Michigan State sports, Michigan State football. And we answer those questions here every week at Spartan Mag Live. Unable to get the open mic night thing squared away. I'm changing from OBS to another streaming provider, and I'm optimistic about that, and I think it's going to turn out pretty good. You know, Michigan State, big news tonight. Michigan State with a new football commitment. Kind of took people by surprise. A.J. Kirk is his name, a safety from Ohio. Played at Dublin Kaufman last year, transferred to Akron Hoban this year, 6'1", 197. He's also listed at 6 feet, 200. I looked up the Akron Hoban trying to find a current roster. Couldn't find one here under crunch time. Not sure what they're listing him as, but he looks like he's all of 200 pounds. Shout out to a magger that dropped that knowledge today over at the Underground Bunker message board. Let me see if I can give that person his proper credit. His name was E.L. Spartan. E.L. Spartan today posted around noon on Tuesday. He just mentioned A.J. Kirk from Columbus, Ohio, loves Michigan State, even with offers from Ohio State and Notre Dame. I think he may commit to Michigan State soon. E.L. Spartan posted that at noon. Not a guy that's been a big not someone who's posted a lot in the past. He's been a Spartan Mag member for 11 years. He's only posted 54 times. His 54th post today dropped big knowledge out of nowhere, had us thinking about A.J. Kirk, and a few hours later, boom, A.J. Kirk commits via Twitter. Hold on to your camera there. And we're still getting information on that. Jason Killip does a real good job for us. He's known as Spartan Insight at SpartanMag.com. He's gotten a hold of some people over at Akron Hoban High School. We're still looking for further information on it, but he committed that way. And he was able to talk with Akron Hoban's strength and conditioning coach Lawrence Wynn. AJ Kirk has not been active on Twitter. He's not confirming things with any kind of tweets or anything like that. So this is all happening within the last couple of hours. We're still chasing it down. We are treating it like a Michigan State commitment. He has committed to Michigan State. Michigan State has commitments, 2 commitments at the safety position, and Michigan State was still looking at a guy named Stephen Johnson out of Venice, Florida. It's our I'm not going to say assumption. It's not our understanding. But reading the tea leaves, it looks like Michigan State went ahead and prioritized A.J. Kirk over Stephen Johnson. Stephen Johnson, a good athlete, plays quarterback at Venice. He's trying to make that position change to be more of a defensive back. But Michigan State with a commitment from Javon Grigsby out of Louisiana, Michael Gravely out of Euclid, Ohio, and of course Charles Brantley's a corner out of Venice, Florida. Antoine Booth, more of a corner out of Hyattsville, Maryland. So Kirk, we were able to confirm that Michigan State is recruiting him at the hybrid position, the hybrid linebacker safety position. We talked about that last week on the SpartanMag. What do we call that thing? The Skull Session podcast. Ron Armstrong joins me. Ron Armstrong and I, we talk about Michigan State football, and once the games get going, we delve into those pretty deeply on an X's and O's basis. Last week, he and I talked about Scotty Hazelton's football, his football schemes when he was defensive coordinator at Kansas State last year. And one of the big differences for Kansas State last year compared to Michigan State in recent years is Kansas State runs a 4-2-5. 2 linebackers, 5 defensive backs. One of the defensive backs, a safety, I think they refer to it as a nickel back. I know we've used, the football people have used the term nickel back forever, but I think Kansas State just calls it an NB. If you look at their roster, I'm assuming they just call it nickel back. I've not asked Scotty Hazelton about that, but last year at Kansas State, in the slot linebacker position, the position that Antoine Simmons played for Michigan State last year, in the slot area, what used to be a weak outside linebacker, now with the proliferation of 3 and 4 receiver sets, that linebacker's out in space quite a bit. Michigan State's been a 4-3 team forever. Michigan State played more base 4-3 last year than any team in the country, it's my understanding. Now, Iowa used to do it a lot also, but Michigan State did it more than anybody's. It's my understanding. Now, instead of having Antoine Simmons in that slot linebacker position, if you look at Kansas State, last year they had a nickel slot linebacker at about 190 pounds, about 6 feet, 6'1", 190, kind of a bigger safety or just a regular size safety at that position. So that's Kansas State. That's Big 12. A slightly different style of football in the Big 12. But the Big 10 and other areas of college football definitely going in that direction. Hold on a second. Hazelton has run a 4-2-5 with a slot linebacker hybrid type of player. Will they do that at Michigan State this year? We will talk about that tonight when I get into the mailbag questions, because that question came up about Michigan State's back 7 or their front 7, and we'll talk about that. It's my understanding, long story short, A.J. Kirk, 6'1", 200 pounds, has been recruited to play that hybrid linebacker safety position in the 4-2-5 as the 5th. Now, we'll talk more about that 4-3 a little bit later, but, looking at A.J. Kirk, as if you've been over the Underground Bunker message board, you've read that he is the brother of Michael Doss, who's a big-time superstar at Ohio State in the early 2000s. He was part of Ohio State's 2002 national championship team. Also part of that 2002 national championship game, Mel Tucker was the defensive backs coach. By the way, Mike Tressel was a graduate assistant. So A.J. Kirk, recruited by Mel Tucker. Mel Tucker knows Michael Doss very well, was his position coach for 2 years. So Mel Tucker, obviously, hitting some networking there in the state of Ohio. And, A.J. Kirk is a 5.5 3-star recruit, but his offer list, pretty impressive, trying to nail this down also. But it's our understanding that Ohio State offered, I'm not sure if it was a full blast offer, committable offer. We're still looking into that. But, A.J. Kirk and his people are reporting offers from Penn State, Notre Dame, Michigan, Kentucky, Minnesota. We're looking into it. It's all breaking right now. He's not a guy that did a lot of interviews in terms of the recruiting situation, didn't tweet, so a lot of it was under the radar. This year no one's taking any visits, obviously, so a lot of this was kind of quiet. But when I look at A.J. Kirk on film, at 200 pounds, hits like a 200-pounder. Thunderous hitter as a safety. Last year at Dublin Kaufman, he played a deep middle safety and hits like a middle linebacker back there. Big legs, comes in, thunderous hitter. I was, in my notes, I kept writing down runs okay. Might not have that safety, like turn and sprint type of speed. But then like one of the last clips, if you watch the whole highlight film, you get about, I don't know, the second to last clip, he chases down an option quarterback. Quarterback looks pretty quick into the open, straight line to the end zone, down the sideline. And A.J. Kirk runs him down from about 5 yards back and shows better than okay speed. So, didn't see him this summer in the t-shirt camps. In the film, he's always deep middle safety, usually coming up as a support player, playing the run or putting heavy hits on people. You don't get to see him really cover people in pass defense, turn his hips and run, that type of thing. So that would be my one question, but a lot of good offers. Tom Kelly with a tip jar. Ring the bell. I don't have a bell. My bell's way over there. Tom Kelly, thank you very much. Appreciate that. And it flipped up really quickly. I didn't see if you had a question with that or not. I'll go over there and check it to see if you have a question. Tom Kelly hitting the tip jar. $5 personal sponsorship. Appreciate that, Tom Kelly. I've got to go to the YouTube channel right now. I'm not on it. And I've got to click on it to see if you included a question with that. Because that's the way it is. If you're throwing the tip jar, here we go. All right, True reported that Kirk was a highly recruited 4-star and then got injured. And ESPN lists him as a 4-star recruit as well. 3-star with Rivals.com. And, there was the injury. There was the transfer. Some other things going on there. So, an interesting talent, physical player. Mel Tucker tapping into his Ohio networks. And Ohio State passed to get Michael Doss's brother, A.J. Kirk. Physical guy. And when Michigan State looks to run this 4-2-5, Kansas State, like I said, had a 191-pounder in the slot. When I was watching the two players that Kansas State used at that position last year, it was two different players. One guy they used against Iowa State and one guy they used against Oklahoma. And they beat Oklahoma and Iowa State. Oklahoma was the number 1 offense in the country when Kansas State beat them. Iowa State's the number 2 offense in the Big 12 last year when Kansas State with Scotty Hazelton beat them. And they had two different players. I think there might have been an injury to number 31. I forget his name, McLaughlin or something like that. Anyway, those guys are like 190, 191 pounds. I'm watching those guys. I'm like, okay, Big 12, maybe you can do that. Big 10 might be a little different. It's more physical, let's face it. Play offense differently. So I'm thinking 191-pounder. Can Michigan State do it that way? In the Big 10, I know other teams in the Big 10 are running 4-2-5s. But I would think in the Big 10 you would prefer to have someone bigger than 191. And here's A.J. Kirk in high school at 200 pounds. Projects nicely at that position. And like I said, Jason Killip confirmed that Michigan State recruited him for that slot hybrid position. So, big news today. Michigan State adds another defensive back. That gives Michigan State 15 commitments. Michigan State's recruiting class is ranked number 48 in the country by Rivals.com currently. That's in total points. But if you look at star average per recruit, Michigan State's number 24 in the country with the recruiting class currently. Not bad. Not bad at all. For Michigan State, Mel Tucker, his first year, not having a chance to recruit outside of Zoom other than, I think, maybe a 6-day window in late February, early March, which helped them get Hampton Fay, the quarterback from Texas. Other than that, it's been all virtual. Tucker's not been able to turn on the charm face-to-face, but still number 24 class in the country by star average. All right, we're just getting settled in. SpartanMag live. Thanks for joining us. Tell your friends about it. Tell your enemies. And we're going to have some fun with it. Let's get to the mailbag right now. I invited SpartanMag members to post their questions over at the Underground Bunker message board, and we'll field these questions here like we always do, and hope to get you guys back involved, calling in open mic fashion here real soon as I do a little technical changeover. Didn't get it done in time for today's edition of SpartanMag Live. Ran into problems midweek last week, and then Thursday had some interview opportunities, and then did the VCast with Konadike on Friday. I traveled a little bit this weekend, did some coaching, high school, 15U, 16U baseball in Toledo, Saturday, Sunday, so didn't get a chance to work on those technical things this weekend. Got back to work a little bit yesterday, and then today, back to work. Ted Gilmore, Michigan State's tight end coach, spoke with media today. We will touch on that a little bit later here on SpartanMag Live. Thanks again to Tom Kelly for that. All right, question number 1 from ZD from Parts Unknown. He says, will Coach Tucker release a depth chart? And if so, who will be the key players to look for? Pretty straightforward question. Yes, I would like to see a depth chart too, sir. We have not seen a depth chart since Christmas. Last Christmas, December. No depth chart in the winter. No depth chart because there's no spring football. No depth chart in July because there were no Big Ten meetings. No media days. No media guide. So no depth chart. Will he be releasing one? I would hope so. Next week on Tuesday, the press conference season will begin. And I'm assuming it'll be via Zoom. And I've got to believe they will release a depth chart for that on Tuesday. Mel Tucker does a lot of things Nick Saban style. And I think Nick Saban always releases depth charts. I don't think we're going to get any bad surprises in that regard about lack of depth chart. I'm trying to fix something here real quick. Apologize for that. So I'm expecting a depth chart next Tuesday. That's the game week. Depth chart next Tuesday, game week. And he says, what are some interesting names to look for? I'll be looking at the tight end position a little bit after what Ted Gilmore said today. He didn't make it. He talks about Matt Dotson is still coming along from that Achilles injury that caused him to miss the last, 6 or 7 games of the season last year. Gilmore said on Dotson, he said, quote, we are counting on him. Quote, he's working hard and getting himself back into game shape. Same type of thing, unquote. Same type of thing Jay Johnson, the offensive coordinator, said last week, that he's working to get back into it. So that's news to us that Matt Dotson, injured last November, is still not back into game shape. I'm surprised by that. He's a true senior, former 4-star recruit. He's had some good moments here and there. But this is the other thing that Gilmore said. He says, quote, if you ask Matt Dotson, he feels like he is a work in progress, but he's working hard, he's competing, and he's out there every single day, unquote. So he's not missing practice, but not the most ringing endorsement that he's back at full speed. I guess they're just being honest with us, which I can appreciate. So with Matt Dotson being, quote, getting himself back into game shape, I've been penciling in Matt Dotson as the starting tight end all off season. Now I'm not so sure. Trenton Gillison, has always kind of struggled as a blocker. It's my understanding he's still working on that, still not great in that area. This is what Ted Gilmore said about Trenton Gillison earlier today. He said, quote, he's a young man that can really help us in the pass game part of it. His challenge, his mission is to get better at the point in the run game. That's something we're challenging him to do, and he's embracing it. He's continuing to get better as a leverage player, continuing to get better using his hands. I think he is well on his way to taking that next step toward becoming a complete player and having a bigger role if he does that, unquote. In other words, he ain't there yet. So, Dotson, question mark. Gillison, ain't there yet. Johnson was talking about Adam Berghorst last week. True sophomore, 6'5", 6'6", 260 pounds. He's added 20 pounds since last year. Came in last year as a defensive end, moved to tight end when Michigan State experienced some injury problems at tight end. Got on the field a little bit, was able to contribute. Now he's added 20 pounds. Johnson has complimented him on his physicality. Today, Ted Gilmore was saying, quote, "We're going to need all of them." Quote, as far as Adam Berghorst, this is not a quote, I'm paraphrasing here, but he says Berghorst has to get his pad level down. They need him to be a physical part of the run game. So, a lot of question marks there. He was asked today about Tommy Guajardo, the true freshman tight end from Dearborn, someone that I pegged as a player that could have a chance to play right away because of Michigan State's problems at tight end. But I was surprised when Ted Gilmore said today, quote, "I'm hoping I don't have to count on him right now," unquote. So Tommy Guajardo, I think 6'3", 235, maybe a little bit too light in the pants right now to play some tight end at Michigan State. I thought his film looked pretty athletic. Question was the physicality. Apparently not there yet because they're hoping not to use him. But once again, Tyler Hunt was mentioned. Remember Tyler Hunt? Walk-on, was a punter in 2018 when all those punters got injured. Hartbarger was injured, I think, at Arizona State. And then, Will Prista got hurt, and then Tyler Hunt came in. And Tyler Hunt averaged 40 yards a punt, was pretty good. And then he was injured. He blew out his ACL in practice late in the season in 2018. So Tyler Hunt came back last year. Hartbarger came back last year. Tyler Hunt didn't punt last year, but he got on the field late in the season in the kick return team as a fullback, as a blocker, and actually returned a kickoff in the bowl game for about 16 yards. And I think he had a fair catch once or twice in the kickoff return team. And Tyler Hunt served as the holder for place kicking. Now Tyler Hunt's moved to tight end. Okay, let's see. Punter, holder, that happens. Tight end, you look at him, and he's 6'2", 235. That's a big punter. He's out of Gobles, Michigan, which is in the southwest corner of the state. He was pretty good in 2018. 40 yards per punt. And I in the spring, I pegged him as someone that was going to compete for the punting duty this year, above and beyond the transfer that's coming in from UTEP. The transfer coming in from UTEP has been kicking out in the Mountain West, most of those games at altitude, and he averaged like 38 yards a punt. Tyler Hunt, kicking with a cold football 2 years ago, averaged 40 yards. I thought he'd be in there competing for that job, but no, he's playing tight end. They need tight ends. But this guy, as a punter in 2018, you remember the Michigan game? Michigan won 21-7. It was a tight game, 14-7, punting it back and forth, defensive struggle. And Michigan State was kind of winning the field position a little bit because of Tyler Hunt. He was great that day. But Michigan got a deep pass to Donovan Peoples-Jones against Trey Person. Trey Person was a true sophomore playing corner. And Trey Person's a safety, but he's playing corner that year because of injuries. And Peoples-Jones beat him deep, touchdown, 21-7. That's pretty much ball game. But State was in it, and Tyler Hunt punted like 11 times in that game, tied a school record for the number of punts, but he had a 60-yarder in that game. He also had a 59-yarder. And the 60-yarder, you might remember, I know that day was a little bit of a nightmarish type of day, but you might remember there was like a really bad long snap, and he made like a one-handed catch on a long snap and ran with it and rolled out and hit a 60-yarder. It was a crazy great play. Great play. And if Michigan State would have won that game, that would have went down as one of the great punts in Michigan State history. Didn't win the game, though. Had a 63-yarder against Northwestern. Okay. In high school, he was a Kalamazoo area high school dream team member at quarterback. All right, he rushed for 1,200 yards as a high school quarterback his senior year, 24 touchdowns for a Gobles team that went 8-3. He threw for 460 yards. This was a run-style offense. It was a run-oriented quarterback. Basketball, honorable mention All-State. Baseball, All-Conference. 3.8 GPA. Academic, all Big Ten. Now he's playing tight end. I mean, Tyler Hunt. Virtuoso. Plus, he's a holder on the field goal team. So, today, Ted Gilmore said that Tyler Hunt has been a very pleasant surprise. Athletic. You don't think of someone, when you hear about people changing positions, you don't think about tight ends, people becoming tight end, moving from the punter position. And if a punter does become the tight end, you're not expecting him to be athletic. But I guess we should think of him as being athletic. First of all, punting, dude, there's more wide receivers. There's more players in the state of Michigan that can play wide receiver at the FBS level than there are punters that can punt at the FBS level. Some of you that go to a lot of high school games, I invite you. You know, some of you guys have gone to like hundreds of high school games like I have. And I can probably count on one hand the number of legitimate Saturday afternoon college punters I've seen live. You go watch high school games, it's been this way for 30 years. They'll punt, 35 yards. But to see a dude consistently boom 45-yard punts, there aren't a lot of guys. There are not many guys like that. George Perlis used to say, great punters are like home run hitters. There's not many of them. And so punting in and of itself is an athletic thing, and it's uncommon. So here's a dude that averaged 40 yards a punt as a walk-on sophomore. Played quarterback in high school, basketball and baseball. Now he's going to dabble and mess around as a tight end. I mean, what's he going to do next? Play defenseman for Danton Cole's hockey team? Chris Solani. Solani was a good hockey player. He played both. I know. Solani was a much maligned punter back in the early 90s. But this guy, Tyler Hunt, helping at tight end. They need help at tight end. And Tyler Hunt's like, dude, I can play some tight end. Tyler Hunt. He's the unofficial SpartanMag.com Michigan State Football Player of the Week. So Tyler Hunt, I'm going to be looking. The question was, what am I going to be looking for on the depth chart? I'm going to be looking at tight end. And if Tyler Hunt is first string tight end, I'm going to do this shirt next week. No, I'm not going to finish that sentence. I was going to say something, but I don't want to come back and regret it. But I don't know who's going to be first string tight end. But Tyler Hunt, good for him, sticking his nose in there, becoming part of it. But, I'll be looking at the linebacker position also, the 4-2-5. Do they have two linebackers in the starting 11 or three? Or do they have two safeties or three safeties? Do they have two corners or three corners? We'll get back to that in a minute. MSU Polo from Rockford, Michigan says, hey, Jim, would love to hear your thoughts on the front seven on defense. The prevailing vibes on the board seems to be, the board being the Underground Bunker message board, seems to be that the secondary could be a strength of the defense and that defending the run and the overall quality of the linebacking core may be the defense's weakness. He says, what do you think? He says, I'm not sure about those vibes. I've not gotten that idea that people think that stopping the run could be a weakness. If you go to a 4-2-5, you're not going to be as physical in the front seven. Just because you're not going to have as many big people up front. But you're asking about the front seven. If it's a 4-2-5 defensive end, you've got, Jacob Panashuk, and I'm thinking Drew Beasley, Maybe Michael Fletcher. But I'm guessing Beasley. He's played before. He's been accountable. Defensive tackle, Naquan Jones, Jacob Slade. Naquan Jones had a little bit of an injury scare a week and a half ago, but it turned out okay. I'm not sure how much that shuffled him out of the practice situation. If so, maybe you've got Jacob Slade and Jalen Hunt starting the first week. But Naquan Jones is okay, but I'm not sure if he got shuffled out of the rotation temporarily. So, Panashuk, Beasley, Jones, Slade. Now at linebacker, Antoine Simmons. He's added 10 pounds. So he's not in that slot area anymore. He's going to be probably not the middle linebacker, but the second inside linebacker. The middle linebacker, I'm expecting to be Noah Harvey. He played some middle linebacker last year after Joe Bocci was gone. Antoine Simmons played it a little bit too, but then went back to Harvey. So I think Simmons and Harvey in the middle. So is it going to be a third linebacker like Chase Klein or Jess Lord Boateng? Or is it going to be a safety in a 4-2-5? I'm hearing 4-2-5. That's what they did at Kansas State. That's what I'm hearing is going to be the primary base defense. But I'm hearing they're not going to be getting rid of the 4-3. And in the Big Ten, you're going to need the 4-3. You play Iowa, they could load up with 2 backs against you. You better be able to go with 4 down linemen and 3 linebackers. So, anticipate a little bit of both, but 4-2-5 in most instances. Rutgers was a 2-back team last year. And under Greg Schiano, will they continue to be? If so, yeah. Yeah, you'd still need that 4-3. So although I think they're going to be a 4-2-5 base program going forward, you might see more 4-3 in the opener against Rutgers. If it's a 4-2-5, which defensive back becomes the 5th defensive back? Well, you can anticipate the corners being, Shaq Brown, and a safety being Xavier Henderson. And then the other safety, maybe Trey Person. The other corner, maybe Kalen Gervin. So Shaq Brown, I've heard a lot of these DBs have gotten a look at that slot, that nickel linebacker position. And I don't know if they call it star like they used to in the D'Antonio Saban system, or if they'll call it, they're not going to call it the bandit like John L. Smith did. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But I wouldn't be surprised if they call it a star, because that's Sabanese, like Harlan Barnett said last week. And Mel Tucker speaks Sabanese. Harlan Barnett speaks Sabanese. Mike Tressel speaks Sabanese. All these players speak Sabanese. Not sure about Hazelton. He might want to call it nickelback, not sure. But that star position, could it be? I've heard, Shaq Brown. Shaq Brown's like 190, about the same size as those Kansas State guys. I've heard even though he's been a corner in the past, I've heard they've looked at him there. I've heard they've looked at Xavier Henderson there, which makes a little more sense to me because he's your biggest safety at 210 pounds. You put him at that linebacker level, you're not losing a whole lot of thump. You're losing some because he's not a linebacker, but you're adding more coverage ability. Michael Dowell has been a dime in the past, playing, down closer to the linebacker position on 3rd and long here and there. Dominique Long has played corner, he's played safety, he's played corner, he's played safety. He's had trouble carving out an every down role on defense, but he's a guy at 6'1", 200 pounds. Is he physical enough to play up in the box? Hard to say. Even, was it Tucker? It was Hazelton 2 weeks ago mentioned about, they're looking at Trey Person and whether he can play down in the box. And that was just a quote, whether Trey Person can play down near the box. And a bell went off in my head like, oh, down near the box, Trey Person, they're looking at him at that nickel position. And he's one of your smallest DBs. But they're taking a look at all of that. And they took a look at that some more during Saturday's scrimmage. I'm just not sure how it's all going to shake out. MSU Polo asks me about the front 7. My guess, Simmons and Harvey at linebacker. It's hard to predict Shaq Brown in the slot. Xavier Henderson, possibly, but wouldn't you rather have Xavier Henderson's knowledge in the back row a little bit more, getting people set up? You can get people set up a little bit more at that safety position than down there. Gosh, I don't have a great prediction on that, other than to say they're looking at it. I can't handicap anyone as the favorite there. I think Xavier Henderson as the body type would be an interesting way to go. But if so, your deep safeties are Trey Person and, I don't know, Michael Dowell. You want to roll with that? I'd rather have Xavier back there leading that tag team. I don't know. Question number 3, Ryan from Jackson, Michigan says, after the second scrimmage, is there word whether anyone at quarterback is starting to separate from one of the others? No, nothing has surfaced as of yet. And going into the weekend, Mel Tucker was saying that all three quarterbacks were still getting reps. And there's that word that is still the case. Theo Day, I'm hearing good arm talent, and that's what Mel Tucker said last Thursday, showing some real nice arm talent. Rocky Lombardi, they like his competitiveness. They like the mobility of Peyton Thorne. That's what Tucker said on Thursday. And for the first time, Tucker mentioned Noah Kim, the true freshman from Virginia. Said he likes the way he throws it around. I can't remember the exact quote. I'll have to go back and look at it. But it's the first time that Noah Kim was mentioned. Noah Kim is not in the competition, but they threw his name out there. Stand by, young man. You're going to have a chance to do some things. Probably run the scout team this fall. Keep working. So, no, I've not heard anything about anyone separating themselves. I'm hearing it's still a competition. Gator, question number 4 from Novi, Michigan says, Elijah Collins was so impressive last year. Does he really have any challengers to unseat him this year as long as he stays healthy? I don't think so. As long as he stays healthy, I think he's the guy. But, the hot back, that thing can change within one game. I mean, I was pretty surprised 2 years ago when all of a sudden I thought Connor Hayward became the hot back against, was it Tulsa? Who was the team Michigan State struggled against? Utah State, right? It was against Utah State. They went away from L.J. Scott, went to Connor Hayward. Connor Hayward looked quicker that day. He was the better running back. He was better than L.J. Scott that day. And, the next year, Connor Hayward is surpassed by Elijah Collins. And I'm not sure I've seen Connor Hayward that quick since then. But, a fumble here, something there, someone can lose favor as the hot back pretty quickly. I don't anticipate that happening with Elijah Collins. He's added a little more weight, added more weight last year, showed some physicality a little bit more this year. I think they really like where Elijah Collins is right now. And Elijah Collins joined Mel Tucker on the radio show 2 weeks ago. They like Elijah Collins. So right now, I don't want to say he's running unopposed. I think it's good competition there. They've got a number of backs there. It's a big stable. I'm wondering if any of those guys would look to change positions. They could use some more safeties. I don't know if any of those guys could do it off the top of my head. But no, I think Collins is pretty safe there, and I look forward to seeing him doing better this year and breaking 1,000 yards behind what I expect to be an improved offensive line, even without Jordan Reed. And Gator says Ted Gilmore's comments today on the tight end positions, he said not very encouraging. Gator from Novi says. He says, why do you think the coaches haven't made that a priority in recruiting this year if it's such a position of need in the Jay Johnson offense? Well, they've got the commitment from the kid from Texas. From Texas. And do they need to bring in a second one? It's a good question. They went ahead and got that commitment from Cameron Allen from Texas back during the summer, actually during the spring. So, just looking close to home in the state of Michigan as far as tight ends go this year, I can't, if you just look at the Rivals.com in-state rankings, just buzzing through them right now, and I don't see any tight ends in the state of Michigan in the top 35. Could a tight end get a major conference offer after the fall season? Possibly. If you go through the state of Ohio, I'm not going to bore you and look through it, but here close to home, I can't think of the tight end picture being real thick with prospects. I'm sure they would love to bring in a Bavaro or a Chris Baker or a Billy Joe Dupree, to date myself. But they need some tight ends. You're right about that. And I don't have a great answer for you as why they haven't made it more of a priority. I mean, I don't think they've got room for necessarily more than one tight end for this recruiting class. Maybe they do. They've got the one and they can still look for one later. But what you want to see is them going out and getting a 4-star tight end. Well, get in line for that because there's other programs trying to do the same thing. All right. So let's go over here to the chat area. Check out some questions. Looks like Cartero 917's batting first. Good to see him checking in. First one to leave. First one to arrive, last one to stay. Last one to leave. First one to arrive, last one to leave. Cartero 917. Rob South checking in. Brian Scalacci with the thumbs up. Call me Kirk. Says, new to the chat, but a faithful watcher. We'll try to stick around as long as I can tonight. Well, thanks, Kirk. We appreciate you. Hope you don't get in trouble. Drippy says, what a great day to be a Spartan. It is a great day to be a Spartan. And I noticed today I was walking around minding my own business. Drove through campus for a minute. Went over to the baseball field. And the leaves this year are better than last year. They are peak right now. And they are meeting their maximum potential right now. I mean, other years you have your peak or whatever, and then it might rain and the wind, and you don't get the true foliage. This year you got true foliage. Am I saying that right? I have trouble with that word foliage. I always want to say foliage or foliage. I'm not sure what it is. But the leaves right now in East Lansing are outstanding. And it's too bad those of you that have been Michigan State football fans forever don't get an opportunity this Saturday to come to campus to watch a football game. I don't know what the weather's going to be like this Saturday, but last Saturday was great. The trees are brilliant right now. So, yes, it is a great day to be a Spartan. It's a great day to be in East Lansing, Michigan. I'm not going to kid you about that. And I know you wouldn't expect me to kid you about that. Rob South, Le'Veon released by the Jets. Wow. Le'Veon. I don't know the entire backstory on that, but Drippy says, can we get a breakdown on AJ Kirk and this new female campus recruiter comp? There's a couple of them. Lisa Ben Chaim, I think is how she pronounces her last name. I've never met her, but she's got a staff. There's a couple of young ladies on the staff doing a great job coming in with experience, I think, in Arizona State, one from the South. So, I mean, that's part of it, and they're into it. And you can, I mean, you need some people to really provide that energy and that front porch, just to be able to appeal to people. And yeah, there's a lot of people giving a lot of compliments for the people that Mel Tucker has hired in the recruiting support area. But I did a breakdown on AJ Kirk a minute ago. Brad Fashenko checking in from Austin, Texas. Doors fan 91. Bell was a bust in New York. He certainly was. Disappointment because Le'Veon Bell was really becoming an iconic tailback with the Steelers. And Michigan State was trying to recruit to that. I'm not sure Michigan State ever fully capitalized on that as much as they should have or could have. You know, they've gotten some decent running backs, but not really. I mean, Elijah Collins is a good one. Wasn't ranked that high. I thought he was underrated. The Badgers liked him, which is quite an endorsement. But, you know, you're bringing in Ladarius Jefferson as a quarterback to play tailback. You know, Connor Hayward as a wide receiver to play tailback. You know, just some makeshift type of guys. With Le'Veon Bell at one point being the best running back in the National Football League, it seems like Michigan State could have rang that bell, no pun intended, a little better than they did during that window of time. And now, can Le'Veon Bell get motivated and make a comeback at all? I mean, the Jets must. I mean, if they released him, obviously they feel they're better off without him. Sad commentary. And you got to hope that Le'Veon Bell doesn't end up one of those sad stories at this point as an athlete. He's made a lot of money, but got to question some of the decisions. So Le'Veon Bell, good guy. I'm hoping for the best for him. I hope he gets back with the team, brushes himself off, and makes a comeback for his sake. All right, Dominic Orino. Hey, y'all, has the video started? Well, this is the video of sorts. It's not the most sophisticated operation. We're pretty casual, but we have fun with it. We'll bring it back open mic night soon. Old Tuck, the bell cow, is here. MJ says, let's have Thornton, please. Let's have Thornton, please. I don't know what you're talking about. Rob South says, what's up, fellas? Old Tuck, hello, Big Toe. Old Tuck is the bell cow of the operation. Rob South is the big toe of the operation. That's what Old Tuck tells us. All right. MJ says, Peyton Thorne at quarterback, please. He says hello from Chicago. And he says, I need to run for president. President of what? The local MSU alumni club. There's good people doing those things, running those clubs around the state of Michigan and around the country. Let's get back to the mailbag. Then I'll come back here to the chat area. Go ahead and feel free to ask me some chat questions. Once again, thanks to Tom Kelly for the personal sponsorship. We appreciate that. What do we have here? Question number 5, Matt from Hastings, Michigan. What does Michigan State have for pass rushers in the system? Pass rushers, that's a question we get a lot. He says we need to be able to rush the quarterback from the edge. Yes, they do. It helps any defense to do that, right? Well, Michigan State's got Jacob Panashuk with 8 career quarterback sacks. Decent player there. He's no Kenny Willekes yet. Maybe he'll come on strong as a senior. Panashuk is okay. It's good. Not a plus player yet as a pass rusher, but he's the guy. And they're going to need something out of him, and they'll need something out of their blitz packages. And if you watch Kansas State last year, there were some sophisticated blitz packages, sometimes pressure packages, where you think, they'll crowd the line of scrimmage with 7 or 8 guys looking like they're going to rush, but only 4 rush, and the others drop back. And it's one thing to do that, and then dropping back into a coverage and playing the coverage on the same page is the tricky part. And Kansas State in the games I watched against Oklahoma and Iowa State was quite good at that, especially considering that Scotty Hazelton had only coached that team for 1 year. And in his first year, crowding that line of scrimmage on third down, 7 or 8 guys moving in and out, and then 4 rush and the others drop, and they get into the coverages. Sometimes it's single safety deep man-to-man. Sometimes they drop into a cover 3. They'll drop into anything. Your basic myriad of zone coverages and man coverages, and they don't tip off what it's going to be pre-snap. All that obviously. And they did that well. And as part of that is a way to help manufacture a pass rush. You're only rushing 4, you're still covering with 7, so technically it's not a blitz, but it's a pressure. It's called a pressure scheme. Anything with, man drops or zone blitzes, if you're bringing 4, it's a pressure. You bring a 5th, then it's a blitz. That's the way most people term it. And and they will bring blitzes on 3rd and long like most teams, but the way they crowd the line of scrimmage and then say they do come with 5, the way they change the pictures, it can be confusing. It's kind of a pain in the rear to try to pass protect against that stuff. Wisconsin's pretty good at those type of pictures too. So although Michigan State might not have a Kenny Willekes or Shalik Calhoun, I do think the Scotty Hazelton system can manufacture a little bit of pass rush here and there just with X's and O's. I think that's something they'll do well. I'm not saying they'll get 40 sacks out of it, but it can help bolster your standard pass rush. And your standard pass rushers, like a Jacob Panashuk, can be helped by those exotics, by those moving pictures. Because now, instead of just a standard 4-man rush, if he became a good pass rusher, you've got a left tackle on him and maybe a running back chipping him, and you know where Panashuk is going to be all the time. Well, now with the Hazelton system, he might be stunting inside with more pressure exotics coming. Now, Michigan State's done blitz exotics in the past, also with defensive ends stunting inside, people coming from the outside. I'm just saying Hazelton will spice it up a little bit more from there. But you got Panashuk, as far as other defensive ends, Drew Beasley's been, a walk-on, like a somewhat functional defensive end, but, not like an edge rusher. Michael Fletcher got on the field a little bit last year. He's gotten some compliments from coaches thus far in camp. I've always seen him as more of a straight line athlete. Looks good, but in the t-shirt camps, he was not a guy that could really bend the hoop. Not an ankle flex, hip flex bend the corner, true pass rusher. Could be a good defensive end, but maybe not a true rush end. So Michigan State's not strong in the proven pass rusher category right now. Jack Camper's around. He showed some promise early in his career, has been battling injuries. The coaches have talked about him a little bit, but not really blown that horn real loudly. So, in terms of incoming freshmen, I'd keep an eye on Avery Dunn out of Shaker Heights, 6'4", 215. Is he going to be strong enough as a teenager to come in and do it? I would say he would be more of a later bloomer type of guy. Chris Mayfield was a guy that I had my eye on from Hilliard, Ohio, but he checked in at 6'2", 285, and they list him as a defensive tackle. And I saw Detroit Spartan talking about King can bend. That's Kyle King out of Indiana. That's the guy that I thought was the most underrated recruit in this recruiting class. And you watch Kyle King, and he does have some hip flexibility, ankle flexibility. Not against the greatest competition in Indiana, but his team was very good. And he's got some physicality to him. But I think Kyle King can be a pretty tricky, a tricky, effective defensive end pass rusher type of guy. Maybe not this year, but in the future. Some of those defensive ends you've seen at like Purdue over the years. Hold on a second here. Let me look something up. Trying to think. Look something up here. Yeah. I don't want to put this on him, but I would have to go back and look to see what Ryan Kerrigan looked like in high school. Ryan Kerrigan's a guy that I really liked at Purdue. And when I was doing the pre-snap reads, jumped off the film, I'm like, who's this guy Ryan Kerrigan that no one's ever heard of? This guy's excellent and ends up becoming a nice player. Kyle King reminds me of that a little bit. This year, not sure. We'll have to wait and see. But, hey, people are asking, who's going to be the pass rusher? Who's going to be the pass rusher? Well, Shalik Calhoun's not walking through that door. Jacob Panashuk maybe can take it up a level and be a guy that can get 7 sacks in a year and be somebody that commands blocking attention more than a man and a half. And that can help other people. But I understand why people keep asking him, because nobody comes to mind. There's no Kenny Willekes. And it's not like Michigan State is the New York Yankees that can just go out in free agency and buy somebody to fill that right now. Right now it's Jacob Panashuk and a bunch of guys, trying to function. Maybe, we've not seen these guys on the field in 10 months. Maybe somebody's going to look completely different once we see them on the field. But I wouldn't hold my breath there. I wouldn't expect Michigan State to have a lot of, just like Greyhound terrific pass rushers. Detroit Spartan mentions that Jacob Panashuk has played hurt a lot, so he could make a jump. They could use that. And that's one of the X factor variables that could turn this Michigan State team from a 3-5 to maybe a 5-3 type of team. Possibly. It's not a prediction. Don't get too excited. It's possible, though. Macklin JB from Rochester, Michigan says, Jay Johnson said the tight end position is the MVP of his offense. Without going through every tight end listed on the roster, the position is a big question mark going into the season. I'm not saying he will line up as a tight end, but do you think this is where Connor Hayward will contribute this season as an H-back or whatever it takes to fill the tight end role in the offense? Question. Now, today Ted Gilmore was talking about Max Rosenthal being more of their H-move type of guy. So Rosenthal is also coming back from an injury. He was injured in the bowl game. So, Max Rosenthal, walk on. Let me see how big he is right now. Rosenthal is 6'2", 270. 6'2", 270. Hayward is 6 feet, 230. So they like, what do we have here? They like Rosenthal as the move guy. And he's 270. Scored a touchdown against Michigan last year. Still coming back from injury. Proven at that position. Now, Hayward could line up as an H. then motion, and then get into a route combination. Good receiver, runner. So, yeah, I could see Hayward doing that. But I don't see him staying on the field as a tight end the way they want their tight ends to be, all-purpose tight ends. Meaning, if Connor Hayward's on the field, I don't see him getting in a three-point stance up at the line of scrimmage and running outside zone to his side. And if the defense knows if Connor Hayward's on the field with a tailback, what are the chances that's going to be a pass play? Maybe pretty good. You don't want to start tipping off plays based on personnel groups. So you need to be able to mirror your tendencies. You need to be able to run as much with Rosenthal on the field as much as you pass with Rosenthal on the field. Same thing with this tight end or that tight end, or this running back or that running back. So if Hayward becomes a guy like you're saying that could be an H-back as a receiver, well, you don't want to be tipping off that it's a pass play when he's on the field, unless you put him on there in third down situations. Third down backs. That could be the role for him as an H or a tailback or either or, I guess. So, that's been talked about a lot with Connor Hayward. Can he be an H-back type of guy? They certainly need tight end help. And he's a thick type of guy, a bigger type of guy, until you stand him next to a left tackle. Some of these running backs look like big people until you put them next to an offensive tackle. Some people don't realize how big the tight ends actually are and how big they need to be to function. Sometimes tight ends have to stay in for pass protection too. And I understand tailbacks have to do that as well. So, so much goes into that position. Hayward at 6 feet, 230. I'm not sure how long his arms are. But I will say this. The coaches kept him for a reason, which surprised me a little bit. Mel Tucker knew Connor Hayward when Hayward was in high school because Mel Tucker recruited Hayward's high school. They kept him even though Michigan State is a little bit low on scholarships. They kept him even though he walked away from his team last year. They kept him even though Michigan State is pretty deep at tailback. So they kept him probably with a plan in mind, I guess. So we'll have to wait and see. And then, honestly, you have to wait and see on Connor Hayward. Last year he was shuffled back to number 2 running back, maybe number 3 running back. And game 4, transfer portal. And he said last Friday during a Zoom teleconference that we had, press conference, he said he didn't finish his comment, but he began to say, well, last year, some things were said and things didn't happen and, well, whatever. And then he finished it. Then he went on to another subject. It sounded to me like he had a different idea as to the way things were going to progress as a running back. Well, he lost his job is one way to put it. So if he loses his job again or becomes a third string or a lower tier reserve, you have to wonder, is he going to stay committed? The coaches say he's doing a good job right now leading the team. The players respect him, and they look to him as a leader. So I assume it's going to stay that way, but will it remain that way if the news is not as good? And give me 30 seconds. Question number 7 from MSU 2008. He says, what information can you share that you heard from the scrimmage on Saturday? What was promising and what was concerning? Also, will you be doing the pre-snap read again this year? Not sure my Friday night, Saturday morning would be the same without it. Well, thank you, MSU 2008, for your endorsement of the pre-snap read. I certainly enjoy putting those together and watching film of Michigan State's upcoming opponent to preview those over at SpartanMag.com. Appreciate that. Also, let me tweet out, and here as we get near the end of the show, and I want to invite some more. Excuse me, Spartan Mag Live. All right, thanks for hanging with me on that. So I had to tweet that out and invite a few more in here. So pre-snap read, yeah, we will be doing that again. I'll be trying to get some more information on Rutgers. I was talking with the Rutgers Rivals.com publisher a couple of days ago, and he's kind of in the same boat that I'm in, or we're in the Michigan State press corps. They're not getting much access to practice at Rutgers for obvious reasons. We got COVID going on, so they're not letting media into practice, and the coaches they are using that to their advantage. If media are not allowed in any practices anywhere, well, they're not going to share a whole lot of information here and there. So Rutgers, new coach, new quarterback, I think. One of their top running backs last year, Blackshear, is transferred out. A lot of question marks, so it's going to be hard to put together information on Rutgers. Usually the first pre-snap read of the year deals more with Michigan State than it does the opponent. Although last year, or in other years, we've had some information about Utah State and Western Michigan, and maybe more than most. And, we had a lot of information on Utah State. We looked at their bowl game from the previous year, and I certainly had a lot of respect for that team coming in, and you saw what happened. They almost beat Michigan State. That was a good Utah State team. Rutgers, no idea what it's going to be. So the pre-snap read in, a week and a half? Is that right? Yeah, we will get the coffee machine going, and we will crank out a pre-snap read of some sort, for sure. He says, what have you heard about the scrimmage on Saturday? Things have been quiet coming out of that scrimmage. Things have been quiet. Like we said earlier, I'm not getting any indication that any quarterback is moving way out ahead of others. Rocky Lombardi's still in there slugging it out. So, they're still trying to figure out, what the safety combinations are going to look like. And there's a lot of cross-training going on just in case they do get hit by COVID. If they lose 3 or 4 offensive linemen, they need to have more than a couple of offensive tackles. Without Jordan Reed, the offensive tackle situation is going to be precarious. You lose a couple of offensive tackles, you got to play with somebody. Although I tell you what, this day and age, this year, when you get hit by COVID, and if you lose a lot of players in one area of your team, you're seeing teams shut down, you're seeing games canceled. So you don't necessarily have to play your game with Tyler Hunt at left tackle, so to speak, right? It's obviously a concern when that happens. Obviously, look out! Turn this place into the Batcave. When the COVID thing hits, obviously it's a concern, but I don't want to say you can opt your whole team out for the week, but if you get just ransacked at one position, you'd postpone the game. Problem is, in the Big Ten season this year, you're not postponing a game. You'd be flat out canceling it because there's no wiggle room in the schedule. There's no bye weeks, and the season butts right up against the Big Ten championship game, which butts right up against the college football playoff. You're seeing SEC games getting postponed, or other conferences, ACC, Big 12. Some games have been postponed because there's open dates and they can jostle around and juggle around. Big Ten is not going to have that opportunity. And judging by what's going on in the SEC and Big 12 and ACC, some occasional cancellations, I would expect a few Big Ten games to be canceled. And I don't think they'll be postponed. I think they'll flat out be canceled when it happens. I don't anticipate that being a widespread problem, but it'll probably spring up. All right, getting to the end of the mailbag here. This pertains to that question. Question number 8. He says, I don't have his name here. It says, what are the contingency plans if the Big Ten cannot complete the football season due to COVID? Would remaining games be played in the spring? I doubt it. I mean, if something big happened and Michigan State were only able to play 4 games, would they change gears and play a couple games in the spring and try to get some experience and television games and some money that way? Would other teams in the Big Ten do that? I'm not going to say never, but contingency plans of Big Ten teams moving games to the spring, I don't anticipate that, because right now the trend is, I know Florida shut down things today, and you're seeing teams here and there shut down things. But in my opinion, I'm not seeing a big widespread problem of teams shutting down games. NFL games, a couple here and there. But, the ACC, they've played 4 games, right? Major League Baseball marches on. They had 25,000 fans at Texas A&M last weekend. You're just seeing more and more fans at these games. I don't see a trend happening that would cause so many games to be canceled. Or as you say, what if the Big Ten cannot complete the football season due to COVID? I don't foresee the Big Ten being unable to complete the football season due to COVID. I might be wrong. That's just the way it looks to me. Question number 9. Hudspart says, since the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services rules in Michigan state that all amateur sports require athletes to wear masks, do you know if Michigan State's players are practicing football with masks? And he says, do the teams that are coming into play in Michigan know of this? Any idea how the Big Ten will enforce this rule, since the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services states that the Big Ten is responsible for compliance? Great question. These are new areas of football I've never covered. But as far as Michigan State goes, it's my understanding, I heard a couple of weeks ago, that when they started practice, when they resumed practice, they were wearing the Zenith football face shield. And you can Google the Zenith football face shield. It's like a clear shield. You've seen clear shields on football masks in the past. Now, it's my understanding they're all wearing them. I don't think we've seen some pictures released from football practice, and I can't say that I've noticed it. Here's a picture right here. Yeah, I'm watching, guys. Yep, it looks to me like all the guys that in this particular practice photo, they're all wearing shields. So, yes, Michigan State is practicing in those. And, yeah, I'm sure that Rutgers is going to have to wear them also. But that's an astute observation on your behalf, Hudspart, for wondering, if visiting teams will also have to comply. And if so, will that take if they're not practicing in them already, will they have to become accustomed to those? I think wide receivers might have the biggest problem with those. Catching footballs with the shield, especially, a sunny day, could take some getting used to. But yeah, you have to wear masks for any amateur sports. I know that the youth hockey players around here are, a lot of the guys wear cages, but now they're all going to the shields. If they stick with the cage, they have to wear a cloth mask, and nobody wants to do that. I'm helping coach a local high school team this fall, and I'm pitching batting practice with a mask on. I mean, I don't go the full 60 feet 6 inches to pitch batting practice. Nobody does, right? But from 40 feet with a mask on, I've got a mask on. They're 40 feet away. 25 kids, 12 swings, some takes. Add that up. That's 300 pitches, people. And I'm not getting any younger. 300 pitches today. And I wish I were better at it. MSU Pat says Tom Izzo has some additional comments, or has had some additional comments this week on Joshua Langford. He sounds optimistic. With his progress, you can tell that Izzo expects Joshua Langford to contribute. We switched to basketball if you haven't noticed. If Langford is healthy, does he start at the 2, or do you have him coming off the bench? I think, by the way, Izzo is going to have a Zoom press conference tomorrow, that being Wednesday. If you're watching this later in the week, it already happened. Go to SpartanMag.com for coverage. Izzo, press conference, Zoom press conference, basketball, it's happening. Usually at this time of year, second week of October, this is usually when they have MSU Basketball Media Day. We haven't had a football game yet, and it's Basketball Media Day time. Usually, Midnight Madness is about a week from now. That's strange. So anyway, Izzo's going to talk tomorrow. I'm sure he's going to enjoy it. He'll give us an update about Joshua Langford and other things. But yeah, if Langford, and I do hear things continue to work well with Langford. If Langford, we'll get back to football in a minute. I'm just one question, just a little bit of basketball here. I hear people in the audience complaining. We love basketball. Come on. I think Langford would come off the bench initially. First of all, they're going to have him on a pitch count, meaning I don't think they're going to want him to play 30 minutes a game. So if he's only playing 15 or 20, might as well bring him off the bench and sit him for first few minutes. Secondly, you're bringing some experience off the bench. Thirdly, he's a veteran who probably knows he's not playing for an NBA contract right now. I would hope he knows that. If he's playing college basketball right now, he's doing it for his team, I would think, and for his teammates. And if he can provide something off the bench, it's great to ask a senior to do that. And Izzo has asked seniors to do that in the past. 2005, Chris Hill, Calvin Torbert came off the bench as seniors. Went to a Final Four. Tum Tum Nairn came off the bench as a senior, right? After starting for 3 years. Cassius Winston took over. Tum Tum was the type of guy who could handle it. Team guy. Torbert and Hill, team guys, they can handle it. Josh Langford, team guy, he can handle it. I think he will start sometimes because when Michigan State loses a game, Izzo often shuffles the lineup to send a message here and there. Could see Langford back in the starting lineup in those circumstances. But I'm guessing he comes off the bench. Firstly, you're going to be starting Rocket Watts, Aaron Henry, and I think Gabe Brown. Gabe Brown has really contributed a lot to the program over the years. He's been waiting his turn. He's been supportive of teammates. I think Gabe Brown starts. And you want to keep Gabe Brown happy. So Joshua Langford would understand that. Izzo could go to Langford. That's the way these things work sometimes. Say, man, I know you could start, but it would mean a lot. Just keep everybody happy. Just give Gabe Brown, throw him a bone here. He's going to start. Langford comes off the bench. You got happy people. And you're bringing some experience off the bench. And depending on what Langford looks like as a player, Langford could provide some scoring off the bench. Best case scenario. And we know that Michigan State, that Izzo has promoted the thought of being a sixth man coming off the bench. Morris Peterson was first team All Big Ten coming off the bench as a junior. You guys all know that that legend, right? And that's what they sold. They've sold that with other players in the past. No one's quite duplicated what Peterson did, of course. But with Langford, you're asking, does he start at the 2? I don't think so. I think it's Watts, Henry, and I'm thinking Gabe Brown. That's what I think. And I think Langford becomes the sixth man this year, and possibly a very good one. And if he is very good, that makes the team a lot stronger. And, I mean, is there a chance that he becomes better than Gabe Brown and midway through the year he becomes the starter? Yeah, there's a chance of that, but I'm not anticipating that. First things first, see if you can get Langford on the floor, see if he can play, see if he can run and jump and score somewhat similar to what he used to. Can he do it for 15 minutes a game? Can he do it for 20 games? Let's walk before we can run in the Joshua Langford category. Matt in Grand Rapids says, what are your expectations, football-wise, on Indiana, Northwestern, and Maryland this year, Michigan State opponents? These appear to be the swing games for Michigan State this year, he says. Matt in Grand Rapids says, and it will determine the success of the season for Mel Tucker, Matt says. Northwestern, Maryland, Indiana. Right now, gun to my head, I think Indiana beats Michigan State. But I do sense a lot of optimism from Michigan State. I think things are going pretty well over there. And Tucker is a no-excuses guy. And he's working them hard, and I think they're responding well. I don't know what's going to happen at quarterback, but I think Michigan State's got a little bit of spark to them in some ways. Michigan State's an interesting case this year. Indiana, they've got Michael Penix back at quarterback. I thought he was dynamic at times last year, was lost to injury at times. Indiana last year went 8-4. They lost the bowl game, Gator Bowl, to Tennessee. I don't know if you watched Tennessee this weekend against Georgia, but they look pretty good. Tennessee's number 14 in the country. I think Tennessee's a legitimate top 25 team. Indiana had Tennessee beat in the Gator Bowl last year and just onside kick just kind of urinated it away. Tennessee came back and won the game 23-22. But Indiana was the better team that day. And Indiana, I think, is going to be better this year. You got Penix back. You got Stevie Scott back at running back. You got Whop Philyor. Remember Whop Philyor at wide receiver? I think Indiana's pretty good this year. Indiana opens the season at home October 24th against Penn State. Be careful, Penn State. I think Penn State is usually matched up pretty well with Indiana. Indiana's given Michigan State trouble over the years. They've given Michigan a lot of close calls over the years. Off the top of my head, I can't remember if Indiana's given Penn State problems or not. The good thing about Michigan State's date with Indiana is Michigan State is a sandwich game. Indiana plays Michigan the week before, and then Indiana plays Ohio State the week after. So Michigan State is that sandwich game in there, if there's such a thing. So, but hey, Indiana was pretty good last year. Michigan State beat them, and they were a pretty good team. That was Michigan State's their best win last year, I guess, right? So Indiana's going to be tough. Northwestern, I've not looked closely at them. I don't know what's going on with the quarterback there. Maryland, they finished their season last year losing their last 7 straight games. And Mike Loxley, that offense looked good at the beginning of the year, but then that team just kind of went Loxley on them. And he had a terrible record at, where was it, New Mexico State or someplace? So I've got my concerns about Maryland, the direction of that quarterback or that program. Josh Jackson back at quarterback looked real good early in the season last year, became very erratic. I don't know who their starting tailback is, but you look at the Athlon's preseason, and those things are written by beat writers who usually know. And at Maryland, they had Penny Boone listed as the starting tailback. Penny Boone, true freshman, Detroit Cass Tech. Michigan State looked at him, decided not to go after him real hard. They had him penciled in as the starter. I don't know if that's the case. I've not looked into Maryland's preseason camp coverage yet this year. Detroit King, thanks Hayden. Penny Boone from Detroit King. So, Maryland, Michigan State better beat Maryland, right? All right. Okay, question number 12. This is our last question. Then we'll go back to the chat area. From Birdman, he says, he's from Parts Unknown. He says, I really feel for C.J. Hayes. In case you didn't see, C.J. Hayes apparently suffered an injury of some sort, tweeted about it. C.J. Hayes tweeted and said, quote, aiming for a quick recovery, unquote, thanks for the prayers and thoughts, those type of things. So C.J. Hayes went down with some sort of injury. We don't know specifically what happened. Birdman says, I really feel badly for C.J. Hayes. I really want to see what he's about. Any timetable on a return. I've not heard anything about a timetable. It's an 8-game season, so any injury that keeps you out for a month, that's half the season. Then it's hard to come back. Any injury is more amplified in a season like this. Jay Johnson, the offensive coordinator, mentioned C.J. Hayes last week. Actually, he got his name mixed up with Jazz Watts and called him C.J. Watts, but he meant C.J. Hayes. But he mentioned him. So C.J. Hayes is a guy that had a little bit of a bit role last year, and it sounded like he was getting into the playing group this year as well. Now it looks like he might be out. You look at for at least a little bit. You look at the wide receiver picture, you got Jalen Naylor, Jaden Reed, and Trey Mosley, of course. Those are the big 3. Not a lot behind them in terms of proven wide receivers. Now that Hayes is out, Naylor, Reed, and Mosley really need to stay on the field. They've got ability, but not much behind them. Behind them, Jazz Watts, the walk-on. I've always liked some of the things I've seen out of him, but he's never really had a chance in a real game situation. Larice Nelson has done some things, but I've not heard the coaches mention him. The previous staff found a way to use him, and he had some big catches in that upset at Penn State in 2018. Good question from Aaron Mays. Any word on the development of wide receiver Trayvon Morgan? No, I've not heard anything. I've seen him on the practice field, which is progress, because he missed most of last year with an injury. Also missed a lot of his junior year in high school with injuries. But he's a big dude. And you're right. I've conspicuously not heard anything about him. A little disappointed, actually, because I think he's got some uncommon upside. And, you're hearing good things about Tyler Hunt. You're hearing good, favorable things about Connor Hayward. It would really be nice to hear some coaches say, man, Trayvon Morgan's really done some things. Maybe he has. They don't want to let that cat out of the bag. I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see. But your question, am I hearing anything about Morgan? No, I have not. Unfortunately for him at Michigan State to this point. Doesn't mean you close the door on that, but nothing yet. Redshirt freshman. Larice Nelson, haven't heard anything about him either. But Detroit Spartans says he's looking good from what I've been hearing. So Detroit Spartans heard some things about Trayvon Morgan. Like we've said in SpartanMag Live a couple weeks ago, we ran a picture of him. He's the biggest wide receiver I've ever stood next to, Trayvon Morgan. So, Larice Nelson, not heard anything about him. But Jay Johnson did say a couple of weeks ago that some young offenses, some of the new young wide receivers have shown some good things. He didn't list anyone by name. I'm guessing Ricky White, maybe Ian Stewart, maybe the kid from St. Ed's. What was his name? Montori Foster. A lot of those guys have ability for sure. Would not surprise me. Maybe the Lockett kid from Minneapolis. A lot of ability there. So would not shock me if one of those true freshman wide receivers, I think it's a very good incoming wide receiver pool. Would not surprise me if one of those wide receivers got on the field to join Naylor, Reed, and Mosley, especially now that C.J. Hayes is out of the picture. So that's it from the mailbag. Let's go back over to the chat area. Put on my glasses so I can see it a little bit better. Yeah, I'm that old. Doors Fan 91 says, any news on the C.J. Hayes injury? Nope. All that I know is what you saw on Twitter so far. I'll keep my ear to the ground on that, but as of now, that's all I hear. Cartero 917 says, Rayshawn Benny looks like Michigan State or Michigan. Do you think we can land him? He's committing on the 25th. You know, there was that great podcast where Rayshawn Benny joined Justin Thind and Corey Robinson. By the way, Thind and Robinson doing a great job. Konerdijk doing a great job covering these Zoom press conferences. Had a good story again today on Gilmore. We'll be covering Izzo tomorrow on Wednesday, October 14th. Corey Robinson doing a great job covering Michigan State recruiting. Also, Justin Thind. They had Rayshawn Benny on their podcast. And it's not a small thing that Rayshawn Benny, a lineman from Oak Park, a 4-star, national top 100, a guy that's been viewed as likely a Michigan commitment for a long time, a Michigan lean for a long time. He's had some good things to say about Michigan State. He's interested in Michigan State. His teammate Davion Prim's committed to Michigan State. It's not a small thing that Rayshawn Benny agreed to be interviewed on a Michigan State recruiting podcast. I know that some people on the message board are like, well, there have been people that have done Michigan State interviews and then gone ahead and committed to Michigan. You know, and it's happened more with Michigan commitments than any other school. You know, Lavert Hill, Ambry Thomas, you know, some of those guys, it's almost like they do it on purpose. Yeah, I might go to Michigan State, bait and switch. Nah, just kidding. Punked. Is that the case with him? I don't know. You know, each recruitment is its own thing, and you hate to cast that type of question on a young high school kid who's enjoying his high school senior year, enjoying the recruiting process. But if it happens, wouldn't shock me if it's a bait and switch. Now I'm going to go to Michigan. But he did the Michigan State interview. Used to be that if someone was available to us at Spartan Magazine, SpartanMag.com, that was usually a good sign that they had some really good feelings about Michigan State. If you know you're not going to go to Michigan State, do you bother doing an interview with an idiot like me? Maybe with Robinson and Thind, those guys are not idiots. But back when, after 25 years of this, history does repeat itself on some of these things. So I do not discount the intrigue that's caused when a guy like Rayshawn Benny does an interview with Michigan State writers. I don't think it means nothing. If the guy were choosing between Michigan State and Notre Dame and I don't know, Northwestern, and he did a Michigan State interview, I would think it would mean a lot. But because the other school's Michigan, I'm still wondering about the bait and switch. But I've not seen enough yet that would shake the popular opinion that it's still probably Michigan. But I'll ask around a little bit. We were one of the first ones that caught wind of the Andrell Anthony thing sliding toward Michigan. So we'll see. All right. Todd H. says Cody White with fellow Spartan Justin Lane with the 4-0 Pittsburgh Steelers. Cody is on the practice squad and burnt a 2-time Pro Bowl corner in practice last week and doing well. Well, that's good to hear. Cody White. He's got ability. Drippy says the Jets reportedly couldn't even get a 7th-round draft pick for Le'Veon Bell. Oops. Doors Fan 91 says Bell still has some money left on his deal this year, so no team wanted to take that on. Todd H. says, predicts that Le'Veon Bell will make a comeback. Seth Foreman says, thanks for doing this. Thank you, Seth, for watching. Mr. Bowman says, looks like the class is looking good so far. Mr. Bowman says, will Coach Tucker release injuries or not? Injuries? No, I don't think so. And if I were a coach, I wouldn't either. There's no upside to it. NFL, they make you do it for gambling reasons. And Mr. Boneman, I don't know why you would want injury information. I know we want to know how C.J. Hayes is doing. We want to know what's going on with Naquan Jones. I hear he's okay. But really, I mean, some of that stuff is private. Secondly, do you really want to help Rutgers? Do you want your coach to put your team at a disadvantage against Rutgers from a intel standpoint? And maybe C.J. Hayes' injury doesn't have a huge impact on it, but you're asking if they'll release injury information. I mean, in week 3, if Michigan State's starting quarterback is not going to play and they know it on Wednesday, do you want your Michigan State coach to release that information? No. Big Will says, I hope they go with Peyton Thorne at quarterback. Rob South says, Gillison came on strong last year. He did have a big play in the bowl game, but then he also fumbled in the bowl game. And his blocking was always suspect, and it continues to be suspect, from what I understand. Detroit Spartan says he's a great athlete, talking about Trenton Gillison. Drippy says, I'm hopping on the Ricky White bandwagon right now. Ricky White, the freshman, wide receiver from Marietta, Georgia. Looked really good last year in the state championship game. Big-time talent in a big-time game. Yeah. Ricky White, I would think, has all the tools to be a good college wide receiver, maybe better than good. We'll see. Aaron May says, do you think Michael Fletcher will get playing time this year? I would hope so. Sophomore, he's playing defensive end, was a pretty good recruit coming in. Nice frame, good athleticism, good kid, willing to work, from what I understand. And he's playing a position of need, defensive end. It's arguably the thinnest position on the team, the most nondescript position on the team, along with tight end. So I would hope Michael Fletcher would get playing time this year. If not, there's something wrong. Brian V says, if they play more 4-2-5 this year, does Klein maybe play some defensive end? Great point. I should have mentioned that. And, Klein is up, what is Chase Klein, 235 pounds, 240? Let me look it up. And he did play with his hand on the ground a little bit last year, in that DPR, designated pass rusher role. 6'4", 235. That's plenty big for defensive end. You are exactly right. That's what's going to happen. Chase Klein is going to be playing defensive end in passing situations, if not regular down situations. Especially if they go 4-2-5, then you have less ability to use him as one of the 3 linebackers. He could probably still play linebacker when you run a 4-3 against Iowa, or if you have to against Michigan. But you're exactly right. I should have mentioned that. Chase Klein is a guy who possibly could give them some pass rush. I'm not saying he's going to be great in that area, but you have to block him. And he's a playmaker. He can run, hit, tackle, do some good things. And I remember him at Michigan State's T-shirt camp 3 years ago, before Michigan State offered him a scholarship. Mike Tressel was there watching him with his hand on the ground. They had him put his hand on the ground and rush the passer. And Tressel was standing there, hands on knees, 6 feet away from him, watching, and specifically evaluating Chase Klein as a pass rusher. And now they need it. And you're right. So, Brian V., you are the MVP of Spartan Mag Live tonight for a great point. Yes, Klein, definitely pencil him in as a defensive end candidate. And if Conan Dyke were here with me doing this tag team, he would have mentioned that 45 minutes ago. I should have mentioned it. I didn't. Foul on me. Detroit Spartan says Snow could become that type of star linebacker. I agree. Darius Snow, Eric Snow's son, when I saw his film as a high school junior, I thought he was a linebacker. And then he lost some weight as a senior, and I mentioned him, are you thinking about linebacker at all? And he was like offended by that. we were just chatting. We were just exchanging messages via Twitter. And he says, "Oh no, I'm a safety all the way." So linebacker is a dirty word to him right now, but I agree with you. He could be a nickel safety in part of the 4-2-5. He was recruited by the previous staff, but I agree. I thought that he was recruited by the previous staff, but could transition and translate to being a star linebacker in the D'Antonio system. Well, now the D'Antonio system's out, Hazelton's system is in, and even more, Darius Snow fits as the slot nickel guy in a 4-2-5, as the fifth of the five. I agree. MM Drippy says, could the staff saying the quarterback competition is still open be a smokescreen? Sure, because if you have decided that, I don't know, Peyton Thorne is the starter, and you mention that, then Rutgers is going to be going out and really loading up on Peyton Thorne video, although there is no Peyton Thorne video at the college level. But yeah, they're not going to, I don't know. If you're a coach, I don't know what the upside is. What is better? When you get into game week, is it better to not let anyone know who the starter is? Or do you let the world know just so your starter goes through the whole week knowing he's the guy? And does that help you on game day? I'm sure there's a philosophy somewhere on the pages of somebody's winning manual. I don't know if Jim Tressel had that in his winning manual or not, but there's a mode of operation. Some coaches think some ways, some coaches think the other. I'm not sure where Jay Johnson and Mel Tucker fit on that spectrum. Mr. Bowman says, if we don't have a quarterback by now, it must really be bad. Well, that's one way of looking at it. If you have 3 quarterbacks, do you actually have 0 quarterbacks? That's possible. Doors Fan 91 says, but that was also the situation in 2013, right? When you had Tyler O'Connor, Andrew Maxwell, Connor Cook, and Damian Terry. 4 guys, and nobody taking the lead. 3 months later, the number 3 team in the country. Doors Fan 91 says, transfer portal or JUCO tight end be needed in 2021. You know what? I thought it was needed this year. And I asked Matt Seibert about that last December when we were doing interviews prior to the bowl game. We were trying to get information for winter football to use like later on in the winter. And I asked Seibert, what's going on at the tight end position? And you're a guy that transferred in. What do you think about Michigan State in this program as being a place that, that a transfer portal tight end might be interested in coming to? And I kind of expected him to say, it's kind of a loaded question, kind of thinking that he'd say, oh, this would be a great place. If someone's a transfer tight end, this would be a great place to go because they threw it to me. I got 25 catches this year, transferred in without a scholarship, went on scholarship. I think I might have asked him that at Pro Day. Or wait a minute, there wasn't a Pro Day this year. Anyway, I guess it was bowl practice. But that's not what he said. He said, oh, I don't know. We got good tight ends here. He said all the right things. Gillison's going to be good. Dotson's going to be good. Berghorst has got a lot of ability, so he was patting his own guys on the back. But you're exactly right. This spring, Michigan State was the spring where they needed to go after a transfer portal tight end. They needed to scour the Mid-America Conference, look to see who could come in as a graduate transfer and go out and get another Matt Seibert. Maybe they looked for one and didn't find one, but I don't think that failure to find one would be an acceptable answer. They needed one. You're saying they need one in 2021? That could very well happen. They needed one last spring, in my opinion. Mr. Bowman says, hey, Comp, did you order your Spartan cutout yet? Laughing out loud. No, I'm not going to get one of those, but it's funny, right? I think we're going to be watching games from the press box. I would rather watch games from the lower bowl because I think photographers are going to be allowed in the lower bowl. I'd rather be down there with the photographers. But, I mean, they've got us in the press box from what I hear, and they are not letting us out, which I can understand. I'd rather not be in the at all. Aaron Mays says, any word about the quarterback recruit from California? No word. Nothing new on him. Seth Foreman says, does Coach Tucker utilize the Yackle, who is a likely candidate if used? Yackle was the jumbo tight end in the previous staff. in their offense. I watched some Colorado. I don't recall them having a jumbo extra offensive lineman serving as a sixth offensive lineman in a tight end role. Who might that be if you went with six offensive linemen? Whoever's not starting. They used last year's offense. They used Jacob Isaiah in that role a little bit. But no, that was a Mark Staten thing. And Staten used it as tight ends coach. And then he used it as offensive line coach. Then he used it again last year as tight ends coach. So, no, I don't think you'll hear that term anymore. They could have somebody utilized in a similar role, but I doubt they'll call it a yackle. Detroit Spartan says running back room is pretty loaded right now. It's crowded. Loaded is an optimistic word. Loaded with talent. I mean, we'll see what Brandon Wright has at 240 pounds. Anthony Williams has ability. I think some pass catching ability, some burst. Got to do it. Those two guys are still unproven. Connor Hayward has been around for 3 years. You know what I've said about him and his vision in the past. He's got a lot to prove there. Elijah Collins is pretty good. Jordan Simmons looking good as a true freshman. I've also heard that Jordan Simmons has looked good as a blocker. He's looked good as a blocker. Pass protection. So that can help get you on the field. So it's crowded. Is it loaded? Yeah, maybe. I wouldn't trade Simmons right now. Anthony Williams is interesting. Elijah Collins is interesting. The other ones, I'm wait and see mode on the other ones. Mr. Bowman says, I hope Bell does not go the way of Plexico Burress and just falls to the face of the earth. I agree. Tyler Miller says, what's up with the delay of Antonio Gates and Ruquan Buckley commitment announcements? I don't know. Gates is a junior. I was surprised that he felt he knew where he wanted to go at this early stage. I thought maybe if he did, then maybe there was a Mel Tucker connection there that had something to do with it. D-Mac is also asking what's up with Antonio Gates. I don't know. He's getting some interest from Southern schools a little bit now, but he's a junior, midway through his junior year. It's disappointing because it was looking like Michigan State was going to get him. Would have been nice for Michigan State to go ahead and begin the 2022 class with a 4-star. Didn't happen. Even if they would have gotten him, they would have had to play defense for another year. So you don't want to get in the friend zone, but not sure. With Buckley, a lot of people think that Nebraska might be exhibiting and demonstrating that they want him more. And I wouldn't doubt that they want him more than Michigan State. I mean, Buckley's interesting two-way lineman. I would have liked to have seen him at the T-shirt camps to see what he could do lateral movement, pass protection-wise, and ability to rush the edge. When you watch him on his film, you don't really... I mean, he's going against his junior film. I've not seen any film of him this year yet, but his junior film really against... Watch the people he's going against. He does not going against good competition. It's really hard to get a read on him from his junior film, but he's an interesting one. Detroit Spartan telling us that Kyle King can bend, and yeah, he can. Kyle King can bend like a, Marcus Rush type of guy. Marcus Rush had some good acceleration. I'm not sure King has that acceleration. We'll see. Hayden Vischer late to the party. That's a demerit for him. He says Dunn can bend too. Avery Dunn, 6'4", liked him coming out of Ohio last year as a diamond in the rough type of defensive end. And defensive ends a lot of times are diamonds in the rough when they're 17. They're 6'4", they're 215. They've not blossomed yet, but they've got some takeoff. They've got some ability to bend. And they fill out later and become first-round draft choices. I'm not saying Dunn will become that, but when you look at first-round draft choice defensive ends, next year's NFL draft, last year's NFL draft, write down all the NFL defensive end first-round draft picks or second-round or third-rounders, and then go back and look at to see what they were in the Rivals.com database. And they're usually 6'4.5", 205. And they're not yet a football player. And then they grow into that frame. Dunn is in that category. I'm not predicting he'll be that, but it wouldn't shock me. But he can take off, and he's got one of those frames. Very interesting prospect. Troy Thibodeau says, biggest weak spot so far. I think he's talking about defensive end. Troy Spartan says, Jacob Panasiuk has played hurt a lot this year, so he could make the jump. I mentioned that earlier, or I read that earlier. Troy Thibodeau says, this is a Detroit Lion shirt me and my daughter are wearing. I don't know what he's talking about. Oh, it's a picture. Well, good for you. I like it. I respect that. Smitty Rock says, I really hope strength and conditioning jump is huge. We need big, strong, durable, well-disciplined guys to compete hard. I agree with you, and I've talked about that a few times in the past. A lot of indications that strength and conditioning has been very well received by the players. The new strength and conditioning system under Jason Novak, very popular with the players. They feel like it has taken an uptick, an upswing. So we'll have to wait and see what it looks like in terms of the players once they get on the field. And they needed that because the cupboard it's not bare, it's not loaded, but whatever is in the cupboard, it needs to be the max of what it can be to get through this season with nothing but Big Ten competition. Detroit Spartan says, Hayward isn't blocking anyone, has great hands, though. Yeah, Hayward, good hands, not great vision as a ball carrier, blocking. There's just elements of his game that just are not complete. Maybe he'll prove me wrong. Smitty Rock says, this isn't junior college. Get guys that can play at the next level. Smitty Rock demanding. Can't argue with that. Hayden Vischer says 11 days. Is that what it is? 11 days till they play? Is that right? I mean, sometimes 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Holy crap, you're right. 11 days till Michigan State plays football. Wow. And remember back in March and April when, the world was a fright and we didn't know what was going to happen in all areas of society and life. And I said, man, at my age, some people might be in the same age bracket. It's April right now, but just wait. It's going to be Thanksgiving in 5 minutes. Wait, 5 minutes, it's going to be Thanksgiving. And I don't know about you, but April in some ways seems like it was 5 minutes ago. Maybe not April, but May for sure. And I think back to the first week of June. I went to a wedding the first week of June. That's when I first came out of the house after working here for 2 months. I have to say I didn't enjoy. I have to say I didn't hate it. I didn't, and I have not hated these 6 months. I know it's been rough for a lot of people. I don't mean to discount that, but we've been blessed here. I've been getting some work done, doing some things, but 7 months have gone by fast, in my opinion. And football's going to start October 24th. Then it's going to be Michigan week. Then whatever Michigan State is, what the record is, and then the 3 games will be played, 4 games will be played. Then it will be Thanksgiving. And then before you know it, it's going to be Christmas. It's going to happen fast. Just because the calendar is all askew. It's basketball season. We haven't played a football game yet, for instance. Troy Thibodeau says, been hearing a new no-fly zone coming. Not so sure yet. That's what they'll try to be. And Barnett will get them coached up. Seth is smart. Goes ahead and posts. He says, what do you think about the Bills versus Titans game? I'm not watching it right now. I used to have it on over there, but I don't need the distraction. So, not watching it. I would have liked to have watched that Dodgers game. I'm going to try to get some work done. I might watch the Astros game. Oh, Thibodeau says no, postponed really would be a forfeit. All right. Cartero 917 says, are we still the favorite for Antonio Gates Jr. even after he postponed his commitment? I would think so. His indications were that he liked Michigan State a lot. I've not been able to nail down whether there's a connection between Antonio Gates Sr. and Mel Tucker. That would be a big factor, or that would be a factor if we knew that were the case. Still looking into that. Michigan State, the leader. I think Michigan State's got as good a chance or better chance than anybody. There could be other teams that emerge, but right now Michigan State's the team to beat. Would I put all the chips into the table and bet that Michigan State's going to get Antonio Gates Jr.? I would not do that, but I think Michigan State is the team that you have to beat right now. Hayden Vischer says, check the post today of Jalen Naylor. Probably talking about the face shield. Face shield. I've not seen that. I'll have to look that up. Hayden Vischer, first day of practice tomorrow. Basketball, yeah, I think it is first day of practice. That's why Izzo is having a press conference tomorrow. Susie Merchant is as well. I'm going to skip through some of these. All right. Yeah, Detroit Spartan talking about he's got some info on some players. Not hearing anything about Larice Nelson. He says that he's been hearing that Trayvon Morgan is looking good. Detroit Spartan says things seem to be trending toward Rocky Lombardi starting in week 1. There's still time, but that's the word as of October 13th. Detroit Spartan says Noah Harvey has been struggling. That's news to me about Noah Harvey. Lombardi, you know, when I've heard about things or heard about people that have seen some things, Rocky Lombardi is often the guy that happens to be running the offense, getting a lot of those reps. Theo Day is interesting, arm talent. Turns them on once in a while with some plays here and there, stature, but still a little bit foggy here and there. Peyton Thorne, mobility, maybe not all the seasoning yet, but Rocky has improved. If that's enough to hold off these guys, I have to wait and see, but I don't dispute with what Detroit Spartan is saying, that it's trending toward Rocky Lombardi. Noah Harvey being struggling. That's an interesting concept. If he struggles as the inside linebacker calling this defense, does Antoine Simmons go to the middle and Chase Klein join him as the other inside linebacker at some point? Is that something that they would look at if Harvey continues to struggle? Interesting. Hayden Vischer said Detroit Spartan is our agent Wojnarowski. Detroit Spartan likes that with a smile and a wink. Aaron Mays, Detroit Spartan is on it. Yes, Detroit Spartan making a run at being MVP, a late run at being MVP of SpartanMag Live this week. Detroit Spartan says Eaglin and Simmons both looking good. Eaglin is the true freshman out of Texas, Donovan Eaglin. It's the first I've heard that about Eaglin. D-Mac says, what's up with Antonio Gates Jr.? Boy, everybody wants to know about that. That's good. People are going to be wondering about him for a while. We'll see. Justin Thind, our daily MVP at SpartanMag.com, says Buckley delaying definitely helps Michigan State. That's for sure. Whether we land him remains to be seen. But that delay was good for Michigan State. It also gives Michigan State a little longer to look at his high school senior film. And Buckley, like I said, his film last year, I just saw the highlights. I'd rather see like a full game than just highlights, because the highlights, he's just dominating some guys that shouldn't be on the field with him. Doors Fan 91 says Matt Dorsey has a great post when he said, if this incoming defensive line class can produce 4 starters over the next few years, Michigan State will be in good shape around year 3 of Tucker's regime. I'll have to go look at that post. We love Matt Dorsey. He does a great job. He's a keen observer of Michigan State sports and recruiting over the years. Was our recruiting analyst for a long time, good friend of mine. I did not see his post over the Underground Bunker, the one that Doors Fan 91 is referring to, but I'll have to go check it out. D-Mac says, who's better, the offense or the defense? Well, that's a good, simple question. Probably the defense. I am old. Let's see. Aaron Mays, can you comment why everybody seems to be down on Lombardi? Why are people down on Lombardi? Well, you know, he of course had a great start to his career with that upset of Purdue 2 years ago. Thrown for 300 yards, and that was a high water mark. Whenever you do that well that early, you can only, you know, it's kind of easy to come down from that, but it's rare to see someone go that well that early and not really approach matching it again. Last year when he got on the field, it was usually, like Detroit Spartan says, he's a 42% passer. Last year when he got on the field, it was usually mop-up duty, and it was poor weather last year in Wisconsin when he got on the field, and it was snowy weather the year before that when he got on the field in Nebraska when they lost. And sometimes weather, sometimes the opponent, sometimes him. He's limited in some ways. So why are people down on him? Good kid, works hard, competes, but he's just not followed up. He's not really moved the team. That's why. Performance. So Detroit Spartan, 3 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and 175 attempts in his career. But yeah, most Michigan State fans have watched him closely, and you don't close the door on that guy. There have been quarterbacks in the past that have come on strong later in their career and done okay. But anyway, we're going to wrap it up. That's about all. Well, we got a couple more things here. Hayden Vischer says, just an observation, but it looks like he's got small hands. You know, that is true. He does have small hands. And one of the coaches from the previous staff mentioned that as a potential limitation. He can only do so much with the hands that he has. But we'll see if he can show some improvement this year. Rocky Lombardi. We'll be starting to find out in 11 days. Michigan State football coming back next week. It's game week, so the next time we've got SpartanMag Live, we will be in game week mode, and it's going to be fun. I appreciate everybody checking us out this week. We went long again. I don't know if we can ever get these below 40 minutes or 30 minutes, or keep it from my voice from running out. I don't know, but appreciate all the friends and all the readers and all the members. Appreciate all the support. We will see you next week. Go check us out at SpartanMag.com. Become a magger. We need new maggers all the time. Tell your friends about it. Tell your enemies. Let's have a good time. Thanks for everybody for watching. We'll see you next week. Spartan Mag Live.